We've had several days of really rainy, stormy weather here, and I kind of wanted to walk out to the garden today and see what the damage was from all those storms we've been having. Before I walked all the way out there, I wanted to check the rain gauge. Ryan got me this rain gauge here next to our back porch. And so this is really the first time I've been able to officially use it. Looks like we had 4 inches of rain in total. Now, this is over 2 days, but that's quite a lot of water. 4 inches in 2 days, especially since we really needed the rain and we haven't had very much for the last several weeks. The grass was really starting to look brown and pretty rough. So I'm sure everything is appreciating a nice, good drink of water. With that being said, though, let's go check on the garden and see if there's any damage over there, because I do see it looks like some stuff may have fallen over. Hey, Pepper. Good morning. Before even getting over to the vegetable garden, it looks like the sunflowers have fallen over. This one was pretty heavy. It was covered in beautiful flowers. Maybe I can push it back in. I'm glad that this one sunflower did not fall on my hydrangea plant though. This hydrangea has been really looking beautiful. This is an Incredible hydrangea. The sunflower did smash my rose a little bit there, but I'm glad it didn't knock over the hydrangea at least. The hydrangea's stems aren't quite as sturdy as the roses. I love these big flower heads though. I think they're so pretty. I'm not sure how well that's going to hold up, but I just kind of stamped it back into the ground. We'll see if it stays. The bees are out early this morning already though, and they don't seem to mind that the sunflower's fallen over. Since it's been raining for the last few days, I really have not been outside to check on things, and because of that, I see a couple new things. The powwow echinacea started blooming and flowering out during the rainstorm. And it looks like there's some more flowers blooming over in the garden. I see that L-shaped bed has something new of color over there. So I'm excited to see what that is when we get over there. I do love the smell after rain. I feel like everything just smells so clean and fresh. We definitely needed the rain. Everything was very dry. I'm very thankful that we had our irrigation system the last few weeks and didn't have to hand water the garden. But we weren't watering the grass or any of the other plants, so I'm sure they are very thankful for the rain. Coming up to our raised bed garden, the first thing I see that got damaged in the rainstorm is the hollyhocks. It looks like the hollyhocks has flopped over. That's kind of a bummer. It was looking so pretty too. A lot of the flowers look pretty soggy from the rain too, but there's still a couple pretty ones on there. The rest of the garden looks like everything's grown quite a lot though in the rainstorms. There's a couple zinnias popping up. This particular dahlia has a lot more flowers on it. I think the flowers I spotted earlier are over here. I have a few dahlias that are starting to open. That's pretty with a two-toned color. I'm excited to see that open up the rest of the way. There's lots of buds coming on too. See some flowers over there. Oh, that's beautiful. That one looks a little beat up from the rain, But look at all these buds all over this cosmos. I like that one. That's so pretty. This is the first time I've seen this cosmos flower. This dark maroon color is so beautiful. I believe this one's Rubinza Cosmos. I think that's really lovely. Next to the cosmos, quite a few zinnias are starting to flower. The Japanese beetles are all over them though. The kids and I came through the other day and handpicked off all the Japanese beetles we could find. But obviously it's been a few days since the rain and it looks like they have been munching away on the zinnias, even in the rainstorm. There are lots of holes all over the leaves from where they've been munching. And they've been munching on the petals too, it looks like. There they are. I don't have a bucket with me, but I'm about to come back out here and pick the Japanese beetles off again. There's some more cosmos that are budding out down here. And some daisies. Last night the kids ran outside in a storm break and picked a few zucchini. And I see that there's still a few more on the plant too. We have a bunch in the house, so I'll let those get bigger for another day or so, but that one's ready to pick too. A lot of the frosted salmon poppies are looking pretty soggy after the rainstorm. There's a couple that still look really nice. I can definitely attest that cutting the poppies when they're just in the bud stage, they last a lot longer in the vase than if you cut them fully fluffy. This is my first year growing them, so I experimented with both methods. And I have some that were bud stage about a week ago, still inside with big, beautiful flowers on them. So that's nice. Definitely some of them from the rain look kind of yucky now, but there's still lots of new buds coming onto the plant. So we'll get more here soon. The tomatoes on this trellis really took off during the rain. They're already to the top of this little cattle panel. If you missed that video, we had sugar snap peas all along this trellis, and I planted up a couple tomatoes that I wasn't sure were gonna make it and that were kind of small, but obviously they're doing just fine because they're pretty tall and they have little flowers on them too. This bachelor's button here next to the tomatoes flopped the other day, but it definitely flopped a lot more in the rainstorm. The rest of the garden looks kind of like a jungle, but it looks pretty good. Everything has definitely grown a lot in the last few days. I need to come in here and make sure everything's climbing trellises like they should be. Some of these tomato plants definitely need a little bit more pruning. There's a chance of rain again today, so I'm not going to prune them today. Oh, is that a ripe tomato? I just found our very first tomato of the season. It might be a little watered down because of the rain the last few days, but this is my favorite tomato variety. This is the Sun Gold tomato, which I think they just taste like candy. It's still so good. Even though we've had several days of rain, that was delicious. If you pick your tomatoes on the hottest part of the day and on a day you're not watering the plants, I think they're a little sweeter. They have less water and more sugar concentration, I think. But that one still is really sweet and tasted really good. If you've never grown the Sun Gold cherry tomato, go find yourself a plant and plant it because they are so yummy. The plant has really taken off too. It's pretty tall. I'm about 5.5 feet, so it's almost as tall as me. Down next to the tomato plants, the basil has really taken off during the rainstorm too. I just realized there's a feather in my hair. I'm not sure if that's a chicken feather or just a craft feather from the kids' craft box. This rain has reminded me that I have another task we need to get done today, and that is staking my dahlias. Last year, I put tomato cages around some of the dahlias, and that worked for the smaller varieties, but most of them just like overgrew and toppled out of the tomato cages and ended up making the tomato cages fall over. So I want to get in here before they get too big and corral stake the dahlias so that they don't fall over, especially if we have another really big rainstorm. I don't want any of them snapping in the rain. I think the method we are going to try this year is kind of like a corral method. I'm going to have Ryan cut me some wood stakes, plop them in the end of the bed, and then have another one at the other end of the bed, and have twine on either side kind of going up. That way they're just supported on the sides and they don't flop back and forth. That's the method we're going to give a try this year. So let's see if we can go get some stakes and just tie these up real quick. Thankfully, our leftover lumber from our house build is still coming in handy. We saved it all here, stacked up behind our shipping container, and that's what we're going to use for our stakes. The kids towed it over to where the saw is for us, and that was so cute watching them pull it on their wagon. Ryan is just ripping down some boards to make the stakes. We're doing nothing fancy here, just basically making a small wooden stake, but still strong enough that we can hammer it into the ground. I'm mainly staking the dahlias with these, and dahlias grow on average about 4 feet tall, so we were making these boards about 6 foot long so that we could put a good chunk of it into the ground. That way it'll hopefully be sturdy enough and not topple over on us. After we ripped all these boards down, Ryan used his saw and just cut the end of it at a slight angle so that it could go into the ground a little bit easier. So the final size of these stakes is 6 foot tall by 1.5 inches wide each way around, and this gave us enough width that we could hammer them into the ground, or I say we, Ryan could hammer them into the ground without them splitting or bending. And Ryan just hammered in all of these wooden stakes that he just ripped down some boards for. And now we're just gonna tie some twine in between the stakes. I'm gonna tie the twine all the way around from stake to stake and probably do it about every foot to 2 foot up. And hopefully this will help this hollyhocks as well, because it got pretty damaged in the storm the other day. Some of the hollyhock stems actually snapped, but most of them are still in the ground, so hopefully if we can tie them up nicely, it'll be okay.
Where does it go?
It corralled in the bachelor's button very nicely anyway. We put an extra post in right next to the hollyhocks and tied a string around them because those were really flopping and they were quite heavy on these outer strings for the dahlias. And these are too pretty just to let them go to waste and not try to save them. When I saw how much those Japanese beetles were eating my zinnias, I wanted to go ahead and just grab a bucket of water and pick them off while I'm thinking about it. They don't really fly away when you grab them. Just plop them in the water. Then they kind of float around a little bit. Picking off the beetles is definitely a little bit of a tedious process. Coming in here and just manually picking off every one. One thing that kind of works for me too is if I can get the bucket close to the plant, then kind of just bend it over and shake it and flick them in. It goes a little faster. But they are really just going to town eating these. Hopefully taking the time to pick the Japanese beetles off will help somewhat. At least it makes me feel better. There's a few less Japanese beetles in the world. The more you cut dahlia flowers, the more they bloom. So might as well cut off some of these buds and bring them in the house. this zinnia is pretty bug damaged, but I'm gonna cut it so it can focus its energy on branching out a little bit. I'm just gonna come all the way down to the bottom of the Y. It passes the wiggle test anyway. The wiggle test is how you know a zinnia is ready to be picked. You basically just give it a wiggle, and if it's sturdy, then it's time to pick, and the stem is more stiff. If it's soft and flops all around, it needs a little while longer. I was a little nervous coming out here after the rainstorm to see just how many things got damaged, but thankfully, really, there wasn't that much. The hollyhock seems to be the biggest casualty of the bunch. And hey, we even found a yummy sun-gold cherry tomato. I'm excited for when those are really in full swing production mode and producing a lot. That'll be really great. Thanks for hanging out with me. Bye, y'all.